Hey, Ben here. Today I'm going to walk you through the next gen plan, the fastest path I know to actually run and grow the family business. We're going to do two things. First thing is we're going to walk through the 5 zones I found every kind of next gen operator moves through. And second, the key pieces of your authority, your operations, and your growth it's going to take to build what I call a next gen family empire. So I know this to be true because I've done this for me and now help other family businesses as well. So, a quick insight to my backstory: I spent 5 years of my own family business in the transport freight industry in New Zealand. 3 of the 5 years, I kind of felt stuck in a role I couldn't really run, which I'll explain a bit later on. I then spent 2 years figuring out how to build kind of authority, smooth out operations, and then grow the business. In the last 18 months, we added just under a kind of $1 million a year in annual recurring revenue, and a business where clients stay for about 10 years on average, so it's about a 10 million LTV. So we also grew the company to be the highest rated freight company in New Zealand, so I know this plan works. So looking at these 5 zones, the journey for a next gen family business operator looks like this. And I'll name them first and then we'll run through each stage together. We have settling in, stepping up, leading, running the show, and growing. And each one is a kind of a journey of its own. And every time you cross from one zone to the next, how you operate kind of has to change. It's usually how much of the business still kind of routes through you, or who actually has the authority kind of for what. So as we move over to the drawing board here, we'll draw it out together. So zone 1, I'll quickly draw out the zones here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Zone 1 is called settling in. Maybe you've just joined the family business, or maybe you just kind of walked back into it. Either way, mum or dad kind of are still running the ship. This is where you're learning the unwritten rules. For example, the customer who only deals with dad, or the job that always loses money, or the client that always loses money. The workaround that's kind of been quietly running for years in the background. Zone 2 is called stepping up. And this is when you're officially kind of leading something, whether it be a department, a region, maybe a general manager role. Perhaps mum or dad even gave you free reign to kind of design the role. This is the zone kind of I lived in for most of my 5 years in the family business, because when I first came in, there was no role for me. My dad was the director. We had an operations manager running the day-to-day, but nobody was working kind of on the business. So I designed my own role from scratch, and built what became the general manager seat. But here's the thing: what I kind of designed and what dad expected wasn't really the same thing. On paper, I kind of had it, but in practice, I'd like make a call and dad would override me, and that's what I call the stepping up trap. So moving on to zone 3, I call this leading. And this is when the role is kind of real and backed by the parents, mum, dad, or both. When you get to kind of fail and win within the boundaries you've kind of agreed upon. This is where I say the next gen family empire kind of starts here, because the first kind of zone is the first zone with real intention about the future of the business. Zone 4 is called running the show. We'll just put here running. And this is where kind of mum or dad have stepped back from the day-to-day, and now you're running it. Kind of the team knows it, the customers know it. Outside of shareholder meetings, you're the highest authority kind of in the building. But here's the kind of like the trap. The day-to-day that used to move through mum or dad now kind of moves through you. Every approval, every escalation, every customer issue, it's all your call. The business looks kind of healthy from the outside, but from the inside, you're kind of like now the bottleneck. You're effectively kind of built yourself a high-paying job inside the business, and you can't leave it. Next zone, last zone here we have is we call growing. And this is where the business runs finally without needing you in every decision. You take a fortnight off and the wheels stay on. Your role isn't kind of running the work anymore. Your role is choosing where the business grows next and trusting the team to execute. Most businesses, let alone family businesses, ever kind of get here. The ones that kind of do, they certainly get there on purpose. So now that you know where you are in these kind of 5 zones from stepping up all the way into growing, let's move to kind of like the system that that moves you from zone 1 to zone 5 that I've kind of built out. So quick interrupt while I've got you here. If you're already kind of nodding along and you want to see what working together kind of looks like, message me on Instagram, DM me on Instagram with the word FAM, F-A-M, and I'll send you the one-page Family Empire roadmap doc on how it all kind of works together. No call, no funnel, just the doc, and we'll go from there. Cool, now let's get back into it. So as we look at our model here, here's how we kind of build a next-gen family empire. But before I kind of show it in more detail, I have to kind of start with what's the goal. Like what I mean by that is, like, most next-gen operators come into the family business with one assumption kind of already baked in. They've watched mum or dad live inside the business, long weeks, phone always on, every kind of decision going through them. And somewhere along the way, they decided, that was just the price of running a business. I made the same assumption myself as well for years, until I kind of realized it was actually a choice. I just hadn't figured out the solution yet. A next-gen family empire is what you build when you choose differently. And if that's what you're after, stay with me. If not, no problem. I probably wouldn't waste your time on the rest of this video because it probably wouldn't be for you. So it's a next-gen family empire because 3 things are true. We've got more money, more revenue, more profit year on year. We've got more meaning, the work that matters to you and to the family, to the customers, to the team, but also most importantly, the role that you play in it as you kind of step into the role of more of a visionary role, lights you up and you love what you do in the business. And then the third one here is freedom, which is a huge one in any business, but especially family businesses. This is where the business runs without kind of owning your life. You take a fortnight off and the wheels stay on. And as it gets bigger, ironically, your week gets smaller. So here's my question for you. Is that kind of landing for you? Maybe you want a bigger business, a bigger team, multi-location, real scale. Maybe you want it leaner, keep the team small, run it tight, lots of profit, lots of time. Either way, if that's the goal, then this is the conversation worth having. So I've discovered that there are 3 things that get in the way of this kind of business. We've got an authority problem, an operations problem, and a growth problem. And the authority problem is that your authority isn't backed by mum or dad in the team. You feel it every time you kind of have to make a call. For example, mum or dad say yes to you, but they don't really mean it. And the long-time team members kind of still route past you. And you kind of feel the gap between what you're supposed to own and what you actually get to decide. That's what I call stuck. So that's the first bottleneck here on the model called stuck. The operations problem is that the business runs on memory. Too much of the actual work lives in people's heads. What I mean is the long-time team member who knows which customer needs a call before 9, the yard guy who knows which trailer the trade prefers, the bookkeeper who knows which invoice to get chased Friday. This is called key man risk, and it's where the business quietly depends on a handful of people whose absence would expose kind of how much of the operation lives in their heads. I could certainly tell dozens of horror stories about where this was true for us. So I tell operators, you're only 1 sick day, 1 resignation, or 1 bad week away from things falling apart, because there's no system underneath the people, and that's what I call scattered. So heading back to the model, the second bottleneck being scattered. And then onto the growth problem. The growth problem is that the day-to-day kind of eats your growth opportunities. And what I mean by that is you start Monday with a list of things you wanted to move forward on, but by Friday, the list hasn't moved because of whether it be approvals, customer issues, team drama, and 8 other kind of fires all land on your desk first. So the work that would actually kind of grow the business never gets the room to kind of happen. And that's what I call buried. So we've got stuck, scattered and buried. No real authority, no clean operations, and no room to grow. And that's what we're here to fix. If any of one of those is kind of true for you, and for most, all three will be in varying degrees, let's talk about the solution. So the first, what I call engine that kind of fixes the authority problem, we call it leading. So if we chuck that in here as the kind of the first milestone that we want to hit, and we call it leading, which I explain as kind of building the seat. We know we've built it when you've actually got a role that's actually yours. The second engine fixes the operations problem, and we call it running the show. Oh, I just realized I put this in the wrong place. And we'll just call it running. You know you've built it when one full week kind of runs without you touching every job or issue. And this was a game changer for me at this section. The third engine fixes the growth problem. We call it growing. I did it again. Move this one back to here. Growing. We know we've built it when you've got a weekly rhythm that moves growth forward. And when all three are humming, you're actually running the business, not just working in it. And that's what we're really after. So what I want you to do now is walk you through layer one of the 9 kind of practical missions inside of those 3 engines, if that's okay. So the most important thing here isn't that you memorize a model. The most important thing is that you use this on your own business, like an X-ray or like a CT scan. And what I mean by that is, for each mission, I'll tell you kind of what it is, I'll give you a quick example, and then I'll ask you a question, and I'll get you to score your own business on each one, like as if you're at a traffic light. So imagine we're over here at a traffic light. We've got green, orange, and red. So a green would be like, this is a real strength for us, you know, we're solid here. A yellow would be, it's okay, could use an upgrade. And red would be, this is a real problem, we could use some work on this. Once we've got your colors mapped out, you'll be able to look at your business and kind of go, that's the first thing that I need to work on. Sound good? So let's get started. On the authority side, the problem to solve is feeling stuck because your role isn't really yours yet. And the milestone is a role with real backing, which we call leading. And we're going to do 3 things to get there. The first mission is called set the outcome. So head over to our model, we'll put here set outcome. And before we touch anything else, you and mum or dad need to be aligned on what you're actually building toward, or else everything else will just kind of fall over. One of the tools we use here is called the sign off, which is a well-structured kind of conversation that ends with a 1-page direction map you both sign off on. So the question here is, do you have an explicit direction for the next kind of stage of the business that you and mum or dad have both signed off on? Mark the mission kind of green if it's yes, and you can both name the outcome from kind of memory. Go yellow if there's a rough understanding, but it's kind of never been written down. And mark it red if it's still kind of like vague or kind of in dispute. So I find a lot of businesses don't have this at all. I'm going to mark it red here. You mark it kind of what's true for you. The second mission is called map the roles. So let's put that one in here. I'm just going to put here map role. Once the first kind of mission is complete and the direction is logged in, now we need a practical map of who owns what outcomes, what decisions sit where, and what signals tell you the role is, being done to the required standard. Because when we look at most kind of family businesses, they don't have a map at all. People get hired into roles, told what to do, usually with minimal to no training, and the reporting lines have stayed blurry ever since. Who decides what, who has authority over what, who reports to whom. Typically it all defaults to mum or dad at the end of the day. One of the tools we use here is called the role map, a 1-page ownership map that you and the team would describe the same way. So the question I've got for you here is twofold. First is, do you have a clear ownership map showing who owns which outcomes, what decisions sit where, what looks good, like for each role? And second is if I asked your team to describe it, would they describe it the same way that you would? So mark it green if it's kind of yes to both. Go yellow if you only have access to it and know it. And red if it lives in your head or kind of doesn't exist yet. So for this one, I'm going to put here yellow. You put down what's accurate for you. The third mission is called back the role, because the role map is just on paper. The backing is what happens when the team tests it. So let's chuck this one in here. This is when like the team watches what mum or dad actually do, not what's been said kind of privately to you, between you and mum or dad. So if mum or dad say, I agree privately, but then say, let me think about it, or I'll need to check when the team brings something up, that should be, that should be under your governance. The role isn't really yours, and the team knows it. And that's the gap that I lived in for about 3 years. So the question here is, has mum or dad kind of named the new structure to the team? And secondly, when the team have tested it, and they will, have mum or dad kind of backed you in front of them. So mark it green if it's yes to both, and the team has watched it happen and adjusted. Put yellow maybe if the public announcement happened, but the backing is in the moment is still inconsistent. And put down red if it's still, I'll talk to them later, instead of that's their call. Talk to them. So let's mark this one down here. I'm going to give it a yellow. All right, so quick recap before we move on. The 3 missions build the same role with real backing. When you've done all 3, the authority side is fixed. Cool? So now we're moving on to the operations side. The goal is operations that run without you. 3 missions to get there. The first mission is called Map the Work. I'm going to put here Map Work. And what I mean by that is I found that the actual flow of a task or workflow through a business is invisible. In other words, every kind of recurring problem that you have, like the job that loses money, or the customer who keeps complaining, or the supply issue that keeps recurring, kind of traces back to a handoff that you can't see. It's possible, you've been blaming the wrong person or fixing the wrong thing. So in this mission, we pick one important workflow the one that's kind of costing you the most time, stress, and money, and draw what actually happens, not what kind of you think happens. The question I've kind of got for you here is, can you take one repeated workflow in your business and show me on paper exactly how it moves through the team? Mark it green if yes, go yellow if you know parts but the whole flow has never been mapped, and put red if the work just happened somehow and you couldn't draw it. So back here, this is certainly something I found is almost non-existent. So I'm going to put down a red, put down what's accurate for you. Next up is called the fix the handoffs. Put here fix. Fix handoffs. So in every workflow, there's one handoff, like the pinch point that's costing you more kind of like rescuing, so to speak, more rework and more interruptions than all others combined. And a concrete example of this, for example, could be the customer to field handoff. What I mean by that could be, the customer tells the office what they want, notes get passed to operations, operations schedules the job, maybe the crew shows up with half the spec, now they're calling the customer for clarification or guessing, the customer's now annoyed, the job runs over, and worst case, the job gets redone. Or you could take the new hire handoff, for example. You hire someone, you both agree on what they'll own as outcomes. Their manager doesn't get the same brief. The team's not clear what calls are theirs. And in 3 months, you're still answering questions from this new team member about what they're supposed to do. These aren't separate problems. They're the same problem, which is one handoff breaking and the costs rippling everywhere kind of downstream. So the question here is, can you point to the single handoff in your business that's costing you the most rescue time and owner interruption right now? Mark it kind of green if yes, yellow if you can name it, but the fixing isn't kind of like in progress or only partial, or red if you don't know which handoff is the pinch point or if it's still kind of costing you every week. This one here I'm going to put red, mark this down what's accurate for you. The last mission in this engine is called the playbook. So let's chuck this in here. Excuse the messy writing. So the handoff you just fixed only stays fixed for as long as you or the relevant kind of team member remembers to do it. The moment you or the team member are on holiday, sick, or away on some appointments, the old kind of behavior creeps back in, and that key man risk just moved from one person to you. So a playbook means the work doesn't walk out the door kind of when the person does. Whatever format works for you, whether it be a checklist, a one pager, a video, as long as the new team a new team member could pick it up and follow it without asking 3 questions kind of per step, is the goal. So the question is the fix you put in place actually written down somewhere the team can find in a format that they'd use, actually pick up and use? And also, could a new team member walk into your business on day 1 and follow the playbook without you having to explain it to them? So for here, mark it down as green if yes to both, and the playbook is being used weekly without you. Put yellow if you've built it, but the team doesn't kind of reach for it, or only you can read it. Or go red if the fix still lives in your head or in scattered conversations. So for this one here, I'm going to put down a yellow. Chuck down what's kind of most accurate for you in the business at the moment. Okay, cool. So now let's move on to the growth side. The goal is a weekly kind of rhythm that moves the business forward, not just kind of surviving the next fire. The first mission is called Protect the Week. So let's get that down here in the model. Put here Protect the Week. Cool. And so remember that the run side gives you your time back. Growing requires that you actually use it. And from my experience, every operator say that they kind of want to grow, then set aside no kind of like protected time in their week to do that work that makes growth happen. Monday rolls around with intentions, and by Friday, kind of the week's been filled with stuff. So one of the tools we use here is called the owner's walk, a protected kind of weekly block where you walk through the business through 5 signals: money, work, team, issues, and growth. This isn't an hour of strategy, it's an hour of kind of attention. So the question I've got for you is twofold. First is, do you have a protected kind of time in your week locked into your calendar that the team knows not to interrupt? And second, when you sit in that time, do you have a simple set of signals you walk through, or do you kind of sit there with coffee wondering what to work on? So go green if yes to both. And the rhythm has held for at least 4 weeks. Go yellow if the time is in the calendar but gets eaten most weeks, or you've got the time but no structure for what to do with it, or do in it. Or go red if there's no protected time at all and it's not structured. I'm going to go red here based on my experience. Cool. All right, the next mission is clear the issues. Clear the issues. So let's jot that one down in here. Clear. Cool. So most family businesses don't have 100 kind of different problems. They have maybe 5. The same 5 issues kind of coming back monthly, weekly, sometimes daily. It could be, a customer complaint about damages, a team member performance issue, a job that always runs over budget, a supply issue that keeps repeating. Insert your flavor of issue. But most operators handle these one at a time, talk about them, survive them, and then move on. And then 3 weeks later, the same problem kind of shows up again, looking fresh. It's because you're not solving symptoms, you're solving symptoms, not patterns. And you can't grow on top of a business that's recycling the same 5 problems every week. So the shift is making the patterns visible long enough to kind of solve them at the root. So the question here is there one visible place in your business where every recurring issue gets captured with an owner attached? And when you look at the issues solved this month, how many were patterns you've already solved before, that just came back? Go yellow if you capture issues, but you're solving them one-off without addressing the underlying pattern. And mark it red if the issues aren't even kind of being tracked let alone worked on. So for this one here, for sure in my experience, so chuck down the color that's kind of most relevant for you here. And now let's move on to kind of like the final mission, which is called Move One Growth Bet. So what I mean by that is most family business operators don't lack growth ideas. It could be a new service line, a new region, a new customer segment, a piece of equipment that opens up bigger work. The problem isn't generating ideas. The problem is typically implementing them. So the pattern I see is people pick 3 or 4 ideas, work on them in their spare moments and hope something kind of sticks. Nothing really ships. So the same 3 ideas are still in progress 12 months later. So the mission has one job, which is turn growth from a wish list into one 90-day project that's actually worth moving. So not 3, not 5, 1. And the discipline of 1 is the mission. So the tool we use here is called the single bet, which is one project, one owner, 90 days to implement. Then you decide whether to keep it, kill it, or hand it off. So the question I've got for you here is, again, twofold. First is there one growth bet right now that's been named with an owner, a success signal, and protected space? And second, have you said kind of not yet to the other growth ideas so the one bet has room to ship? Put green if yes to both, yellow if you've named one but you're still kind of trying to move 2 or 3 at once, and red if growth is still a list in your head, with nothing shipping. So for here, sorry, I forgot to write it in, but here, one bet. Again, in my experience, it's almost non-existent. I'm going to put here yellow. Awesome. So that's all 3 grow missions: the owner's walk, the weekly rhythm with 5 signals, the issues board, the recurring patterns solved at the root, and the single bet, the ship discipline with 1 project. When all 3 are kind of running, you're not buried anymore, and the business doesn't kind of just run. It's clearly evolving. Cool. So here's what we've got. We have a map of your business, like a 3D scan across the 9 missions. You've got greens, you've got yellows, you've got reds. Right about now, you might be kind of looking at this map and thinking, that's a lot. 9 missions, 3 engines, a whole list of things that need to kind of land. So here's the thing that I kind of want you to hear. You don't need to install all 9 at once. You need 3. The 3 that would kind of make the biggest difference for you in the next 30 to 60, 90 days. Whatever those 3 are for you right now, that's your starting point. That's your constraint. That's where we kind of focus first. So behind every one of those 9 missions sits a set of tools, tactics, and kind of proven playbooks ready to install in your family business. So if you want to see what kind of like working together on this actually kind of looks like, send me a message on Instagram, again with the word FAM, F-A-M, and that's our kind of little signal that you've seen this video. I'll send you a 1-page doc that explains kind of how the program works, what we do together, what the 12 weeks actually looks like. There's no funnel, no sales call, just the doc. If it's for you, you'll know what to do. If it's not, no hard feelings. I wish you all the very best in your family business. Send me a message with the word FAM on Instagram, and I'll see you in my DMs.